I'm just curious about what Mr. Maduro is facing. Does the government have a good case against him?
Well, it doesn't sound like it. I mean, if the claim is that he's some kind of great big narco-trafficking head of state, there's very few drugs that go out of Venezuela that arrive in the United States. Most of the fentanyl comes from precursor chemicals in China through Mexico. And the cocaine is only about 5% of the world cocaine market. Most of that goes to Europe. So I'm not really sure that there's a very good case to be made. It's a justification that Donald Trump is trying to use to get past the War Powers Resolution in 1973. But I don't think it's a very good case. And he may just win on the merits of this. The jury will just say not guilty because there's just not enough evidence. We don't know.
Wow, interesting. It's been suggested that this will be a years-long legal saga, Robert. Is that true?
Oh, yes, very. The most likely example would be what happened with the dictator of Panama, Noriega. So Manuel Noriega was, of course, arrested pretty much by the 82nd Airborne Division when they moved into Panama in 1989, as I recall. And it was kind of a similar in that way. And there were years of kind of constitutional arguments, most of which lost. The Supreme Court has pretty much said that once you were on U.S. soil, you were amenable to U.S. prosecution, no matter how you got here. But this raises all kinds of questions of international law. And in fact, the bigger problem is this violates the Constitution because it is an act of war to go in and arrest a head of a foreign country.
Well, we're going to get to that in a moment here. Is there a chance, Robert McWhirter, that the former president of Venezuela can cut a deal here? Could there be a settlement?
Oh, I suppose he could. Anybody can try. But, you know, a plea agreement, nobody has a right to a plea agreement. That's all a prosecutorial decision. And I don't see any interest in the Trump regime giving the head of the Venezuelan regime a plea in this case. So I don't really see that forthcoming in the criminal case. But you never know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't see a diplomatic advantage to that either. And really, this seems like a big way to draw attention away domestically from things like the Epstein files and the failure to support Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine to try to draw the focus to Venezuela.
Very little mention of the Epstein files over the weekend. Robert McWhirter is well known to our audience because we call on our friend in Maricopa County pretty often at times like these. One thing you may not know, and I didn't know this, Robert, until producer James brought me up to date. You spent a good chunk of time, 2000, 2001, working for the World Bank and the U.S. State Department on programs of judicial reform in Venezuela. This is at the start of the Chavez regime. You also spent a year in El Salvador managing a U.S. program to reform the courts there, the justice system, and police. So we're talking to an authority. And I'm wondering what you think happens next, knowing that everyone else from the regime is still there, Robert. Will there be a de-Bathification of Caracas?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be a de-Chavismo. Because of the Chavez regime, Hugo Chavez, named after. Look, yes. You just take away Maduro, you still got the entire party in charge. Now, that party should not be in charge because they lost the election to Gonzalez, a year and a half ago. And so there is going to be some popular support in Venezuela for a change, I grant you that. But really, Maduro's party, Chavez's party, is still in power. The other thing I will say is Donald Trump, he says, we're in charge in Venezuela now. That's really kind of an absurd statement. But how is he going to affect that? Because if you recall, in the first week of this second Trump administration, he wiped out USAID, United States Agency for International Development. That was the organ in the federal government that was used to run countries and do nation building. Well, Donald Trump and Doge wiped it out. It's no longer in existence. So just when he says we're supposed to be in charge, we don't have any way to take care of anything anymore because he wiped it out.